Hello, thank you guys for joining us for this Millennial Nuclear Caucus. We're here this evening to really discuss and examine a question of our time, really. What is clean energy? I'm Tara Young. I'm part of the External Affairs team at the Nuclear Energy Institute. How many of you have heard of us? Oh, yeah, all right. Kelly's very excited back there, good. So we're figuring out ways to persuade policymakers to embrace nuclear technology for all of its benefits, but primarily we're really looking at them to really credit us for our role in being a top provider of clean energy. So as a millennial who's worked in the energy field for 6 years now, I'm very excited about tonight, and especially that my peers are leading in this conversation. This evening's caucus gives us the opportunity to really exchange ideas about how we make that clean energy future a reality. So following my opening remarks, you'll hear from Susie, James, and then a really great panel of millennials. And then we're going to do a really cool networking exercise. It's a really great opportunity for you to talk to all the bright minds in this room tonight. I want to thank our partners for hosting tonight's event, including the Department of Energy, Energy Northwest, TerraPower, NuScale Power, and the Clean Tech Alliance. Thank you all for your advocacy and for your support. So to kick things off, allow me to introduce a passionate nuclear advocate who really needs no introduction. Susie Jaworowski, the Senior Advisor to the Office of Nuclear Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy. Susie.
Thank you. Thank you, Kara. Thank you to NEI and all of our sponsors who are here helping out tonight. I'll mention everybody in a second, but I just really want to set the stage and set the mood here tonight. This is an environment where I hope that you'll feel comfortable asking questions, thinking about clean energy, thinking about how nuclear fits into the clean energy landscape, and ask the tough questions that are on your mind. We have experts here from NuScale, TerraPower, Energy Northwest, and these folks know their business. They also know the vision of the future of nuclear technology and nuclear energy. And so this is the time to ask. Don't feel uncomfortable if you think, gee, I really want to know about something that might not be popular in this environment. I want to know about a question about how does spent fuel work in the advanced reactors? How are we going to solve that problem for the future? This is the place to ask those questions. And so let me back up just a second, if you would indulge me for a minute, and I'll give you just a little bit of background of why we're here and how this all came together. Secretary Perry came on board as the 14th Secretary of Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy in 2017, and one of the first things he recognized is that nuclear energy has an image problem. And I think that we can all, if we're going to be realistic about it, agree with that and know that that image problem is some based on legacy issues from the very beginning of that technology that are left over, that I think here in Washington State, the residents know that very well and know about the good, the bad, and the ugly of what has happened to the legacy part of our technology. But you also know with companies like TerraPower here and NuScale right over in Corvallis about the vision for the future. And that we're hoping that that legacy that the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Environmental Management is spending many, many years and lots of time and efforts to responsibly clean up those spots won't overshadow the vision of what the future can bring for nuclear technology. Because clean energy is extremely important. Nuclear is the third largest source of electricity in the United States. Nuclear is the #1 source of clean air energy in the United States. And so it's something that we can't ignore just because of legacy problems and issues. It's something that we really do need to think about and make sure that it's securely ushered into the future. And so that's part of what we're going to be doing here tonight. And what we created with these caucuses is a chance. We could have gone out and said, let's do an ad campaign to tell people about nuclear energy and how great it is. Well, that's not really sincere and that's not really authentic in this day and age for this serious topic. And so that's why these caucuses came about, is an opportunity for real people to ask real questions of the folks who are working in today's technology and developing the visions for the future. And so we're very excited about having our panelists here tonight to be able to give you the reality of what's happening for the future of advanced technology and nuclear. One other item I want to mention is that we're also excited at the Department of Energy because recently nuclear has been accepted on the world stage as a clean energy source. The Clean Energy Ministerial had always been a clean energy organization that was representing clean energy sources around the globe in hopes of helping to meet our global clean energy goals and our global climate goals. And so nuclear was not a part of that. And that was something Secretary Perry noticed right away when he went to the first Clean Energy Ministerial. And he said, we need to make sure that nuclear is accepted at the Clean Energy Ministerial because it really is a clean energy resource. And so he came back to the Department of Energy. We needed 2 country partners to help us to make that a reality. So right away, Japan and Canada jumped on board and said, yes, we are supportive of nuclear being considered a part of the Clean Energy Ministerial. Since then, another 6 countries, for a total of 9 countries, have all stood up and said, yes, we do agree that nuclear should be a part of the Clean Energy Ministerial. And we have more countries submitting letters of support all the time. So that is another exciting effort that's underway as well. So before we get to our panel, I also again want to thank Energy Northwest, TerraPower, NewScale, and the Clean Tech Alliance. Thank you so much for having us here. But I especially want to thank Tara and all of the folks from the Nuclear Energy Institute who've been an ongoing supporter of this series for the last almost a year now, and we really appreciate that. So we do have a quick treat also tonight. Our keynote speaker is a colleague of mine and a good friend. His name is James Campos. He is the director of the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity at the U.S. Department of Energy. And Director Campos was out in this part of the world this time, and we thought it was a great opportunity to have him come and talk about how important diversity is among young people in STEM education. So before we get to our panel, I want to welcome our Director of the Office of Economic Impact at the U.S. Department of Energy, Jim Campos.
Good afternoon. I hope that you excuse me. I'm going to read a little bit of my notes to make sure I haven't missed anything, but just a brief background. I am the new director at the Department of Energy. I was confirmed by the U.S. Senate on April 24th. So this is going on 6 months, and it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve in this capacity. I'd like to thank the Millennial Nuclear Caucus for their gracious invitation and special opportunity to speak here before you. I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to be part of this exciting event. One of the goals at the Department of Energy is to harness the capacity of our nation's diversity by creating opportunities for the next generation of leaders to work in our program offices and national laboratories. With an ever-changing energy landscape, the importance of increasing minority and tribal participation in nuclear energy is essential for our economic prosperity, global scientific standing, and our overall national security. Creating more diversity in nuclear energy starts and ends with people and leadership, and involves human connection and engagement, like building rapport between the new workforce of the millennial workers and seasoned leaders in the federal government. As the next generation of leaders in nuclear innovation are here, you are in a unique position to shape the future of nuclear energy. Your ideas and approaches to problem solving will spur innovation and help lead our country into a new era of nuclear progression and energy dominance. I want to encourage all young people interested in nuclear energy, advanced sciences and technology solutions, or clean energy to continue their discussion of nuclear energy's role in our evolving world. We all have a stake in the future of nuclear energy, and your leadership skills and knowledge in this area is a great value to our nation. In conclusion, here at the department, we remain committed to ensuring that geographically and demographically diverse stakeholders are included in these conversations. Not only do we want a diversity of ideas, but we want to support a future energy workforce that is diverse and more reflective of our general population. The Office of Economic Impact and Diversity is always looking to collaborate, partner, and expand outreach to diverse populations and stakeholders, including women and veterans. So please visit our website at energy.gov/diversity for more information and what we can do to help. I want to thank you here for allowing me to provide this opportunity to speak. As Susie just mentioned, I just came from Alaska, where I went up to northern Alaska to a part I never thought I'd visit, and that's the Arctic Circle. I had a great chance to go up there and visit rural tribal communities to understand their particular needs. And nuclear energy, believe it or not, could play a pivotal role in those needs of the Native Americans in the future. There is still a lot of work to do, but the future is there. It's clean energy, as Susie has expressed. It's viable, it's sustainable, and it's something that we have to spend more time as a nation looking into. So I am here to represent and help the diversity of that in all sectors of our economy and our nation. We have many individuals out there that we need to engage. As you well know, STEM education is a priority and a need to go into the nuclear fields, and there's a lack of that participation and engagement in those fields. We really, truly need more millennials, more minorities, Black, Asian, Hispanic, and Native Americans to enter this field. We have an aging workforce, the DOE especially. The mean average is 57 years old. Who is going to replace those positions? When you have an average of 8 to 9%, even less, with Hispanic and Black participation in these areas, you have the character of this country changing by 2020, just 2 years from now. K through 12, majority minority. By 2044, this country will be a majority minority country. And if you look at the numbers and look how we're engaging, we're not doing an adequate job. And we have to do better. The low-hanging fruit, women. Women should be much more engaged in STEM. And unfortunately, those numbers, those trends have not changed since 2000. We're going on 20 years, and those numbers have not significantly changed. So we're doing something that's not effective enough. So I encourage everyone to please promote not just nuclear energy, but STEM education. And if I can help, or my office can help, to please give me a call directly, or my office, or contact Susie, because she's always a great ambassador. And I sincerely thank you for this time. And if you have any questions, I open it up right now for any questions one might have. Any questions? Great, this is awesome. All right, guys, I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you, James. And if you do have questions, you can find him at the bar later. Now we want to hear from leading millennials in the clean energy space, and I'd like to invite our panelists up. Our panel moderator tonight is Blaine Highland, an instructional technologist for Energy Northwest at Columbia Generating Station.
All right, thank you, Tara. I'm excited to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion we're going to have today. Before we get started with the panel, if you direct your attention up here on the wall, you'll notice we have the hashtag Nuclear Visionary. So feel free to join the conversation. Anything you tweet out with that hashtag on it will show up on our wall up here. All right, so on our panel, we have Sandra Stewart, who is a maintenance program specialist at Energy Northwest. We have Ethan Bates, who is a senior engineer of design integration with TerraPower. And we have Karen Dawson, the nuclear science and engineering PhD candidate at MIT. So first off, each of you could just take a minute to tell us your background, your connection to nuclear power, and why clean energy is important to you. We'll start off here with Sandra.
Thanks. So for me, nuclear energy production is a bit of a family business. My father is was a reactor operator at Comanche Peak Nuclear Power Plant, which is in north central Texas. I grew up in the area while he worked there, and after I finished high school, I started in a student program where I worked at the power plant in different technical positions. That is, people working in the field or in a lab. And I went to college at the same time, and the idea was we would be ready to work in the industry, because it's a very daunting industry to actually work in. and would be pursuing some sort of a STEM technology degree while doing so. I left Comanche Peak about 4 years ago, came up here to Energy Northwest where I switched completely my career path. I used to do a lot of environmental compliance, and then I moved into maintenance, which is a unique place for a woman to be in nuclear energy.
So my interest in clean energy started 12 years ago in high school through doing debate in Millennial United Nations, where I realized that developing clean energy, it's actually a moral obligation. It's not just a passion. It's not an interesting, cool science application. It's an obligation of our generation. And Earth is so special. There's only one, and the idea that we could find another one somewhere and inhabit it and move everything that we have here or there is a community fantasy. So we have to preserve what we have. And I'm so happy to have found a company, Air Power, that has its values aligned with that. And Bill Gates, his approach is slightly different. It's basically realizing that delivering clean energy to developing nations is the most effective way to raise living standards in those countries. So he's looked at all the ways that he can help developing countries, and he's put a lot of money in our company because he believes that clean energy is important to accomplish that.
So I guess my path to nuclear, I started off as an environmental engineering major, also political science, and through the combination of those two, I just got really fascinated in this idea that nuclear power was one of the biggest power producers in the United States, yet nobody seemed to be talking about it. So I decided to go to school, or get my PhD in nuclear engineering, and through that path, I've studied everything from studying risk assessment of reactor failures, human interactions with the technology, and lately I've focused my attention to looking at the economics of nuclear. As many of you in the audience probably know, that there is that economics don't look good for nuclear in the United States right now, and so I helped participate in a study called The Future of Nuclear, which the executive summary is on the table back there, and we looked at how we can change this perception of nuclear into the future, and we found that there is opportunities for nuclear.
All right, thank you. So we all know in here that nuclear is our largest source of clean energy in the country. So in your conversations with millennials, do they seem to know that? And if they don't, is there a good way to educate them on that? And what is the challenge with getting that message out there?
So in my experience, I have run into a lot of millennials that really aren't clear on nuclear power. What they've experienced has been the consequence of the industry failing to really get engaged in advertising and marketing. The bulk of the life of the industry, the philosophy was out of sight, out of mind. And when I entered the industry, it was the same thing, that we just didn't want to talk about us. People in the community knew that we were there. They were always fans of us because we brought them jobs, we brought them taxes. But once you spread further out, a lot of people really didn't know. They didn't know what we did. We didn't know what we offered. They didn't know how we operated. And so we only talked when we were forced to talk. Then over time, we started developing groups like the North American Young Generation and Women in Nuclear. And those groups, at the request of the industry, started doing grassroots organizations. So we're doing that. But we were so far behind the fossil industry and other emerging renewables and groups like that. They've been advertising for decades. We hadn't been. So we're playing a lot of catch up here. And as a result, those of us that are defined as millennials and then the generation below us, what they grew up with was kind of a negative portrayal in pop culture. Think about how often have you seen nuclear energy or nuclear or radiation depicted in movies, television? What does it look like for you? My son's first, recollection is The Simpsons. And so most of us think of that, and is Homer Simpson really a good representation for those that work in the industry? Sure, we all laugh at it, but that's not what it's really like at a plant. And then think about the Godzilla, the X-Men, things like that. How often have we been depicted as a positive part of the community versus some of the other sources that are available. So we're playing catch up. And what we have to do is more of this, the one-on-one conversation. The industry pushes where they can in marketing, using what we have available. We talk about what we bring to the community, what we're really offering. We have frank conversations about the risks and the values. We talk about the different people that are involved. As Ethan mentioned, this is a moral obligation for a lot of us in the industry. We are bringing power to people, and power is life. That's what we in the industry have to promote.
Yeah, so I think there's three answers to that. One of them, Sandra covered, that there's this legacy issue where we're conflated with nuclear weapons and the fear associated with that. The second is that nuclear electricity, once it goes on the grid, is considered a commodity. It's indifferentiable from, and the electron, you can't tell where it came from at that point. So people they lose the understanding of their origin of their electricity and what that electricity created when it was generated. So that's number two. And number three, I do know a lot of millennials who care about clean energy and climate change. And I think millennials just like to be in control. They like things that they can understand and hold in their hands. They like going to the grocery store and picking out a product that aligns with their values. That gives them a sense of power. And so if we can somehow carry that energy over to how we get our electricity, I think there is an energy there. There is a enthusiasm on the part of millennials. We just have to tap into it.
All right. Okay, so as Karen mentioned earlier, there's a recent MIT study called The Future of Nuclear Energy in a Carbon-Constrained World. That's available in the back for those that don't have it. So the main value, it's massive. Nuclear energy is sorry. So if needed, we found, So the study found that nuclear energy's main value, its massive potential to decarbonize economies, must not be allowed to slip away. So Karen, how can policymakers and voters take action to realize the recommendations in the study?
So first, I would encourage everybody to read the study, but I will summarize some of the policy conclusions that we developed in the study. The first one is creating an equal playing field for all low carbon technologies. So there's a great graph in the report, and of course I don't remember the figure number, but it shows that with just a modest value added, so extra revenue, you could say, from the nuclear power plants that is associated with its carbon-free nature, a source of revenue that wind and solar already get, that a lot of the nuclear power plants that are in danger of shutting down right now because they're not profitable will remain open. It will cross that threshold of allowing those plants to be profitable. So the first policy recommendation we have is making sure that whatever policies that we create for renewables actually are there for all low carbon technologies, including nuclear. And some states have made great strides towards this already, including New York, and Illinois, and I think New Jersey. And then, so the other policy recommendations come into several different buckets. So one being, what role does government have to play in research and development of nuclear technology? And again, I encourage you to read the full report for all the details, but there is a role for the government to play in allowing for new companies to demonstrate new reactor technologies, similarly to how the aerospace industry set up milestones for commercial companies to develop new technologies and then pay the companies once they've met these milestones. And that allows investors to feel more comfortable investing in these companies.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So we've had a lot of talk about the economics and viability of nuclear going forward, and we recently, just last week, lost another plant. So we're down to 98 plants now. If this trend continues, what do you see as the environmental ramifications from this continued path of data?
Yeah, I'll jump that one off. So that question is particularly near and dear to my heart, being a Massachusetts resident. We're going to lose Pilgrim in 2019, and Pilgrim, if you don't know, is a nuclear power plant in Massachusetts that provides about 15% of all Massachusetts power, and it's going to be shut down for economic reasons. And Massachusetts has this goal that by 2020 we will reduce carbon emissions to a reduction of 25% of 1990 carbon emission levels, and then 80% in 2040 or 2050. But if we look at 2020, that's 2 years from now, and if we're going to lose 15% of Massachusetts power, carbon-free power, we're probably not going to make our 2020 target. So if we think about the environmental ramifications of shutting down these plants, you have to look up what are we replacing the power they generate with, and it's probably not going to be carbon-free.
Yeah, I think the MIT study also tackles that on a more quantitative level. You know, what will happen to electricity prices if we try to still meet our climate goals without nuclear, and you can kind of see the difference. So, yeah, I like that approach. But more generally speaking, even just to get renewables to the level that nuclear power is right now, which is 20% of our electricity, would require big changes to how the grid works and its ability to handle the intermittency of renewables. And then if you try to expand it beyond 20%, so 50%, we're starting to talk about 20 to 40% of our energy demand has to be stored somewhere. That's gigawatt years of energy. And I mean, we just don't have that technology right now. And so what we do have now is nuclear power, and we know how to use it very well. And it's taken decades to get to where we are, where capacity factors are at 90%. And that's an expertise that would be lost. That we can't let that happen. It's an effective, it's an efficient and economic technology. It's just not on a level playing field because we're not giving it the benefit that it's providing to our environment.
Yeah, I kind of want to tack onto that as well, and then I can completely agree with everything you said, but I also want to mention that when we lose generation, we don't lose demand. People are not going to change the way that they live because we've shut down a power plant that was producing 15-20% of the power in the state. So we have to replace that generation, and most likely, and in every case that it's happened, we replace it with a carbon-emitting source. But if we were to go in and, well, maybe we have enough of those sources, but they don't generate to what the nuclear facility did, now we have to build something new. And every time we build something new, we destroy the landscape that is already existing. So if you care about something like conservation, you're a hunter, you're a hiker, you love the outdoors, you like animals, you're engaged in those type of environmental activities, which is where I spent about 7 years of my first part of my career was environmental issues. Is it rational to make that sacrifice, to tear down a forest to put in a solar panel, to bulldoze a forest to put in a coal plant like has happened in some areas? We have to build things, and when we build new things, we are damaging our environment. So let's go with what we have. It's working, and there's a consequence across the board, not just to carbon emissions, but to our landscape and the animals that live in that environment when we have to build a new generation, and we will have to build a new generation.
Yes?
You mentioned competing with other green power sources. Are the other green power sources, are they base load capable or are they base load? What's the difference?
Yeah, when I'm talking about renewables, I'm mainly talking about expanding photovoltaics and wind, which are really intermittent sources of energy. And hydropower is considered renewable, but it's not really expandable in a large amount from what we currently have. So that's where the intermittency issue comes into play when we talk about increasing, to 20 to 50% of our power coming from renewables. The grid will have to deal with it.
All right, so we talked a little bit about lowering emissions by 2020, these targets. In a lot of places, they're doing this via renewable portfolio standards, Washington included. And we're trying to get a push to what we call clean energy standards rather than renewable portfolio standards. So what are the benefits of a clean energy standard for our country in Washington over a renewable portfolio?
So this is a conversation I really like to have with a lot of people. Before I go into that, I want to preface that I am an employee of Energy Northwest, but what I say is not an official policy of the company. We are a diverse company with nuclear and renewables, and I very much support what the company does, which is why I chose this company, but I am not their official policy person. So when we look at a renewable policy versus a clean energy policy, I consider renewable energies to have your heart in the right place. You support the policy because you care about people and you care about the environment. The downside is you are unnecessarily limiting yourself to technologies that they're okay. They're not baseload. We're still in a place where we need baseload. We don't have the power storage. We don't have an actual example of somebody, it's a developed nation that's been successful out of 100% renewable. And there's consequences to expanding renewables, as I mentioned earlier. The other thing is we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what the generation below us is going to create. And if we have to put in place 100% renewable laws across the country, we may have to change that law in order to allow the next generation of technology to come in place. And so I think we're unnecessarily limiting our technologies. We have proof that nuclear power can do what it needs to do to preserve our environment, to give us carbon-free generation, low emission sources, so we're protecting air quality as well as our concern with carbon and addressing climate change. But we just don't know what the future holds, and that's my biggest concern with 100% renewable policies. It isn't proven anywhere in the developed world to work, and we just don't know. There's so many cool things that other people might come up with, and we legislated it out of existence, and that will stifle creativity. If you get the experience of working in the industry, you learn as you're trying to develop a new reactor or a new technology, your biggest barrier is money. And if this product isn't something that someone's going to want to buy and build and carry it to licensing, you're stuck. You're not going to get it to market. And so I just hate to see that happen. And I really think those policies could hurt us.
Okay, so what is one thing that you would say to millennials to persuade them that nuclear is essential for a clean energy future?
So I kind of following up on my previous comment. As millennials, we like to understand where the things that we buy come from. We want to find organic, free-range chicken, knowing that the chicken that we're eating had a good life. We want to buy coffee that comes from Ethiopia, and we want to know how it was processed. We want to understand how that process affects the flavor. So if we can just take a fraction of that mindfulness and that attention to detail and ability to research things on the internet and apply that to finding out where we get our energy and what's produced from the energy that we purchase, that'll go a long way in changing how we behave. It'll change the way you conserve energy. And one constructive idea is just to go visit a nuclear power plant, go visit Columbia generating station, visit coal power plant, visit in oil fields, and see what the differences are in the scales of those operations and what they produce.
So I completely agree. I'll say in my conversations with millennials, one thing that I like to emphasize is diversity is key. I don't think a 100% nuclear grid would be a good idea. I don't really think a 100% renewable grid would be a good idea. And especially when we're thinking about developing technologies for the future and all of the uncertainties that those technologies have, it's like when you pick your stock portfolio, you're not going to buy all Apple stock, right? You're going to diversify your portfolio. So the role that I think that nuclear will play in the future is one of the adding diversity to that portfolio.
And, you know, it totally alignment with them. I mean, we want to be diverse. We want to look at all our options. But I also encourage everybody, especially if you're on the fence, if this is a new event for you and you're just learning, follow the facts. Let's take a look at what the numbers say. You know, what are we seeing across the globe? What do we see that's actually happening? And I just encourage everybody, go with the facts. What does it say? And then we start looking at how does it make us feel. But let's take facts over feelings when we're talking about our future and our stability and our health.
All right. Thank you all for the wonderful demonstrations and the great discussion we had. We had one question. Anybody else have a question?
So to go back to the previous question related to what do we ask our congresspersons and senators, what do we specifically ask for? What bill? Is there anything besides a nebulous, here's what we want? Because based on my experience, that doesn't really do much to them. They just say, oh, okay, yeah, I voted on these things in the past, or I don't vote for these things. Is there a specific act or bill that is going through either the House or the Senate right now that we can advocate for?
The short answer is yes, but I don't have that information, so come up to me and get a card, email me, and I'll get it to you.
There is a bill that just passed Congress. It's called the Nuclear Energy Leadership Act. And so that's easy to remember, Nuclear Energy Leadership Act. It's a bipartisan act that was brought together from both Republicans and Democrats. And it outlines some very specific things for the Department of Energy to do to help the United States regain a leadership role in nuclear, including developing a versatile fast test reactor that can test for, in a very short period of time, smart fuels and advanced materials and things like that for new advanced nuclear power plants like what TerraPower is developing, as well as producing high-assay LEU uranium for use in those tests and a few other things. So it's a bipartisan bill, Nuclear Energy Leadership Act.
And there's a state bill also. That's the one that I can't remember that Washington has coming up. Yeah. So that one I'll find for you if you get my business card, so you can be very specific.
So, just for a little bit of context, I'm the president of the chapter of the Institute of Nuclear Materials Management at University of Washington. And over the past few days, because we've had our club recruitment, I have spent time talking to literally hundreds of millennials and older Gen Z kids about nuclear and what their awareness of it is. And the conclusion that I've gotten from this anecdotal but still kind of exhaustive survey of that campus is that really 90% of people just have no clue. And out of those 10% of people that know, the fraction of them that think that it's positive is nearly zero. The first word that I asked people to think of that they gave me when they thought about nuclear or radiation or any of those words was scary. It's kind of faded into the unconscious, the collective unconscious of society that nuclear is just this bad, scary thing. So really, we're fighting at best just plain apathy and no knowledge. How can I reach these kids, so to speak, and message them that nuclear is viable for their careers and a viable path for energy in the future? Seeing as somehow you were all convinced, and people like me were convinced as well.
So the first thing is going to get my business card later. So Blaine and I are part of the North American Young Generation in Nuclear, and that is an organization that includes college people as well. We could start a chat with you, that'd be great. But one of our pillars is public outreach, and so we work kind of this grassroots thing that NEI is one of our sponsors. We work through them. That's kind of what we do, is we help give you the tools to have this conversation, and we can probably help you out with that. But really, it's what we found in different surveys. Oh, also there's the Seattle Friends of Vision. They are here to help you, and they put on different talks in the area that are really good. They bring in some great people to talk. But what we found in different surveys is the more people learn about nuclear, the more supportive that they are. And so we just need to give you the tools to help have the conversation more. And
So this is slightly off topic, but I want to know if can anyone in any either public policy organizations or any private firms consider your public policy with regard to Initiative 1631. This will be the nation's first price on carbon. I understand this might not be in alignment with your specific policy or your ability to comment on policy. However, I would encourage you, if anyone knows whether or not your organization can make a statement, I encourage you to do so because we know that a price of between $15 and $45 per ton of CO2 will help save some of our operational nuclear plants.
so I can't.
Right. And anyone else, please.
All right. Thank you, panel. I think we're about out of time for questions, but feel free.
I wanted to say, as an MIT alumni, I can advocate that, and that's actually very clearly laid out in the future of nuclear power as the best solution for supporting nuclear. It's not hand-picking technologies and saying, let's do that, let's do this. It's putting a price on the externalities created by power technologies and letting the market find the best way to clean our air.
All right. So our entire panel is here for the rest of the evening. So if you have any other questions, feel free to pick their brains later. So thank you, panel.